What if the biggest lever for sustainable protein isn't on the farm or in the lab, but inside the first weeks of an animal's life? Welcome to Industry Ignited, the show where we explore how industrial leaders are building what's next. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar. Today, I'm joined by Erik Visser, CEO of Hamlet Protein, a global provider of soy-based specialty proteins for young animal feed with production in Denmark and the U.S. Erik brings decades of experience leading international feed and additives businesses through transformation, M&A, and growth. Erik, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Leeanne.
Let's dive in. Erik, you studied law and political science before building a global career in animal nutrition. What bridges did you build between policy, commerce, and science to lead effectively in the sector?
Yeah, it's a good question to start off with. Academic studies shape the way you think and you analyze complex matters. It's still very theoretical. But for me, going into real life, the curiosity to learn new things allowed me to really dive into an industry like animal nutrition. Not to be smarter on a technical level, because we got plenty of smart people for that, but to create winning strategies for the companies I've been leading and apply science in such a manner that it can be turned into a commercial success. And that's many times where we see tension. We see great technical ideas, but bringing technical insights to a winning commercial formula is still a very big bridge to cross, and many promising companies don't make that leap.
And is it because of the strategy, because they're not planning and thinking ahead, or what do you see as that the reason behind the failure to make that leap?
I think sometimes it's it's not just about the right product. It's also about the right positioning and building the network and being able to explain what is a return on investment, how are you going to help solve a problem for a customer. So you need to come from a exploration or innovation phase, very inward looking. You need to move to making that into a concept that you can bring to market, and from that point, from the inward looking innovation to building something that works, and then actually also going out to make the sale in a very fragmented market. That's a challenge. So you need to have a clear strategy and a clear go-to-market strategy. And you need to have a clear direction.
And it sounds like a strategy that's very broad, like a strategy that, it's not just looking inward, but it's anticipating what's going to happen when you do take it to market. And so there are a lot of things you have to look at in creating that strategy.
Yeah. Exactly. And then still you want to boil that down into something that your staff can understand and align behind and follow. And it also sends a clear message to the market. So you cannot be everything for everyone, right? So what are you really good at, and what is the key message or the key area that you want to target with your company where you're going to make a difference?
Right. So really having that clear brand message, knowing who you are, like defining your mission, your vision, and values, and creating alignment within your organization.
Exactly.
Yeah. So from Latin America to Europe and now Denmark, what did living and operating across regions teach you about navigating volatility, culture, and growth?
Yeah. Latin America is just a great learning environment, and if you really ever have the opportunity to go and live, not just travel, but live in a different environment with different language, different culture, and also different, let's say, business culture, the only way to be successful is to adjust. And you have to deal with things that you cannot teach. They cannot teach you in business school. You have to deal and adjust to the unforeseen. So if you go to emerging markets, there's a higher level of volatility that you need to address. And for me, that, adjusting to unforeseen circumstances, to different ways of doing it, and getting an appreciation for different way of doing that, that has been so tremendously helpful for me when dealing with customers and suppliers and business partners from different geographies, different cultures, different ways of thinking. You know, there can be tremendous growth on a personal level if you're open to new ways of doing things. If you go and visit another country and you bring with your own toolkit and your mindset and your set ways of doing things, uh, you're not going to be able to succeed. You need to
Yeah.
be able to blend your specific qualities with the needs of an environment that's going to be intrinsically different from the one you grew up in.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So visiting is one thing. It's like you see the superficial. Um,
Yeah, it's the difference
yeah.
between scuba diving and snorkeling, and looking
Right,
from
exactly.
outside to an aquarium or really swimming in between.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah, I like that. You've led turnarounds and integrations in private equity-backed environments. What's your playbook for aligning technical teams, commercial goals, and investor expectations without losing speed?
Yeah. Speed is of essence, but you also need to take the necessary time to learn about the business. As I said earlier, you don't have to be the technical detailed expert in all the specific elements, but you need to understand how to connect the dots internally and then link that to how you're going to make your commercial proposition. Um, so for me, it's always been very important to speak to the people on different levels, not just management team, but on different levels, up to the operator levels, to really understand what are the bottlenecks that preventing the company for growth. There's usually loads of ideas in companies that not necessarily come to fruition because they're not brought to the right platform. And then, you have to develop that strategic roadmap that serves as a compass. And that's one thing. You can put it on paper and the world is filled with beautiful PowerPoints. But then to execute that, you need to create clarity with all stakeholders. And of course, very important, your employees and your investors. So you can have a high level strategy that your investors can relate to, but what does it mean for the people in your factory, in your finance or your customer service department? So can you translate your overarching strategic goals to specific actions and guiding principles for all levels of the organization? So making sure that everyone goes into the same direction, but they also have a clear understanding how they can contribute to what you define as success.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful explanation of what's needed. I mean, really, yeah, it's translating at all levels. So I mean, we spoke about the cultural dynamic and being able to integrate in a way that's where you understand the nuances of culture and what that means there. But then inside of an organization, taking it further and being able to translate that across the different roles. And so, like you were saying, no matter if it's an operator or an executive, you're communicating that vision and that strategy in a meaningful way that's actionable across the different levels. And yeah, that's
Exactly.
super clear. And I think that's not easy for everyone to do.
No, it's not. You have, yeah, the, the human relationships, and it's also something been fostered by me by my time in Latin America. That's the interaction is always been important for me. I believe that if you engage people and you treat them well, then and create the right culture, your success will follow. So for me, people come before processes, and have a clear understanding what motivates and drive people in your organization and how you can then motivate them to go to a next level is critically important. And you can only do that if you have a true interest and an ability to listen. That's what we read about all the time: servant leadership, EQ instead of IQ. And for some people that comes natural,
Right.
and others need to focus on that. But it's clearly important if you want to engage people. Nowadays, people don't just show up to earn a salary. They want to feel that they're part of something bigger and something more important, and understand the scope of their activities and the impact it has on the markets they serve. So you,
Yeah.
you, you need to pay attention to that.
So it's really developing a listening to the people, understanding what's important to them, what motivates them, and then speaking to that. And I think it's also developing that foundation of trust.
Oh,
And
definitely, definitely.
they
Yeah,
don't
I'm a
try.
big fan of psychological safety.
Yeah.
That concept that you allow people to feel safe enough to speak up what they think, what they feel, and even if they have a different opinion from the leading opinion in the company, that's so incredibly valuable. The top-down management style is that's way behind us. You want
Hmm.
an inclusive management style. You still, if you're in a leadership position, you have to take responsibilities. You have to show that leadership, take the responsibility, assume the accountability, but do so involving the people on the different levels in your organization that can bring you a huge benefit.
Right. Looking back, what inflection point most reshaped your leadership philosophy, and how does it show up in your decisions today?
Yeah, I think I remember asking my first managers that I find it very difficult to understand what it is that you really do. So what's going to be important for me when I move to a next level? And he said, the most important thing is that people want to commit to you. Are they going to pick up the phone at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon because you have an emergency to deal with? And if three people call, are they going to help you? So it's like, if you get your people to be willing to support you and support you on the journey you want to take the company, then that's three-quarters of your work. So this really that it's kind of is the power of the connections that you make. It needs to be still sincere. You cannot fake that. You cannot fake being interested or committed to people, but creating a culture where people feel appreciated and then embrace the power of these connections. I think you cannot assume that everyone comes in and shows up as their best just because you pay them a salary.
Hmm.
You have to offer more than that. And I do not refer necessarily to a lounge corner or a table tennis or whatever. No, it means real engagement from middle management and senior management. You know, and when you bring that attitude and you show a real interest in the people and they commit to you, then you can create a powerful team dynamic that drives performance of your organization.
Yeah. So, how would you advise new leaders to step into that, to cultivate those meaningful relationships?
I think critically important is not look only on the processes, take the time to listen to people, also take them the time to show them what the different steps are. Sometimes we have the risk of going too fast and we lose people along the way because they really don't understand what's next or what's coming. Understand the emotions that come with change management. It's not just that people understand it on an intellectual level, that they will be able to deal with it on a emotional level. So this, you know, create create a commitment and a cohesion in the team that allows you to feel that you're addressing a challenge together and then and celebrate that success together. So don't make the mistake that just doing the intellectual exercise will be convincing enough that everyone will say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to follow you.
Yeah, right. So, investing in their success, really getting to know them at a emotional level,
Yeah,
personal level, again, figuring out what's important to them and making sure that they understand how they can do the job right and well and succeed, like caring, basically. Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Hamlet Protein focuses on early life nutrition and gut health. In practical terms, how do your specialty proteins change outcomes for piglets, chicks, and calves?
Yeah. So gut health is a central topic in animal industry nowadays. And when you look, so a healthy gut is critical in the animal's performance throughout its lifetime. And when animals are at a young age, then that gut system develops very fast. You might say we put some strain by the fast growth. So we need to pay specific attention to the gut health. animals are fed with soybean meal as their core base ingredient, but they cannot just digest soybean meal very well at an early stage because it contains so-called anti-nutritional factors. So what we do at Hamlet Protein, we reduce these anti-nutritional factors and create a specialty product that is highly digestible, highly palatable, and also gets absorbed very fast. So we target the early life stage because that's the most critical and most vulnerable part for the animal. And once the animal grows older and the gut system matures, it can digest all sorts of ingredients. But by addressing the early life stage, a young animal nutrition, we set them up for success throughout their lifetime. And you could compare that to what we do with babies, with young kids.
Mm-hmm.
When they go before they eat solid food, they have an in-between phase where they need to adjust to different types of food that their system can digest. It's similar for animals. So we set them up for, that's why we say a good start makes all the difference. We set them up for success by feeding them well right from the beginning.
And you sell to feed mills, premixers, and integrators, not directly to farmers, is what I understand.
That's correct.
What must a supplier get right to become spec'd in and stay there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we operate in a very competitive market with a large number of suppliers looking to get into the diet of any given customer type that you mentioned. And there's not necessarily a one-on-one replacement between all the products, but the diet composition for animals consists of a broad range, a larger number of different products. And putting one in or taking one out then also impacts the inclusion of other ingredients. So first of all, you need to have a good quality product, but that, in my view, is a hygiene factor. To become part of the formulation, you need to share data and insights with nutritionists to show how your product promotes the health and performance of the animal. On top of that, you need to build a relationship of trust. You need to spend time. Sales cycles in our industry, the more technical the products get, can easily be 1.5 to 2 years. So that relationship becomes very important as you go to the different stages of the sales cycle. And obviously, you need to show a clear return on investment, but you need to build relationship with the decision makers you want to attend. You need to provide clear insight in the functioning of your product, and you need to show how the inclusion of your product that will add a cost to the diet will return into better feed conversion, better growth, better performance.
Yeah, so you really want to understand those metrics. You really want to see
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And with plants in Denmark and Ohio, how do you balance global consistency with local optimization, like raw materials, energy costs, logistics, and service?
Yeah, it's very. We are very proud and happy to have 2 plants, especially in the current volatile trading environment with tariffs being created for imports and exports between different countries. So being able to produce in the US and produce in Europe and then service our export markets depending on where the supply chain makes most sense and is most efficient is very important. We provide the exact same quality of product in both plants, so we have global specs. But then the logistics, the supply chain, that is something that we track. I'd say on a daily basis. So for the home markets, it's a no-brainer. So what you produce in the US, you sell in the US. But we sell in Asia, we sell in Middle East, we sell in South America. So things like inland transport, sea freight, energy costs, raw material costs can vary quite significantly. So we make use of the flexibility that we have through these 2 plants to optimize our supply chain and make sure that in terms of time to market and cost, we take the most beneficial route.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just to overcome some of the obstacles that the economy or the global economy, I guess, is facing right now. And to maintain relationships in different parts of the world and be most efficient. Having plants in different countries, helps mitigate those issues. Is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's always something going on somewhere in the world. There's animal disease, geopolitical issues, trade wars. So
Right.
you like to be able to have that flexibility to optimize your the flows to your export markets.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Feed is 60 to 70% of total animal production cost. Where are the biggest realistic efficiency wins in the next 12 to 24 months, formulation, process, or data?
Yeah, I'd say all of them combined. We need to optimize formulations, and right now with the emergence of artificial intelligence, there's increased opportunity. So technology is going to play a role in that. But we also need proper processes like farm management and biosecurity measures to ensure that specialized nutrition can really make an impact. Um, and the use of data is very common in our industry. We consistently test at lab level and in the field. So there's a lot of data going on. It's a very, let's say, a technical way of doing business and evaluating product. And that use of data with the growing importance of AI, it can be really helpful. But it's really important if you don't manage your farm well, if you don't have the right biosecurity measures, then you can throw the best feed at your animals, but you're never going to be performing to the levels that you want to.
Yeah. So has AI made a difference? Have you implemented AI since?
We're just now starting to work with it and exploring. And well, to give you an example, you're doing some product development or research, and you're looking at the impact of a certain element or certain you want to read, find certain literature, where people would have to search the internet for a day to get the proper information and now get it in minutes where they can find specific research. So find me PhD research on topic ABC, whop, it's right, it's right there. So I think in marketing management and writing stories, it's already been more incorporated. And the next level will be that we will look at automation of standard tasks. So I'd say we're still early stage. We're tracking it. We definitely not using it in customer engagement because we really still believe that's a people business. So we can do it to answer specific questions, perhaps, but the selling, the interaction with customers and suppliers and distributors, that's still very much boots on the ground kind of process.
Right. And like you said, I mean, data, it drives AI success as well. So it's like really
Exactly,
about, figuring out how to collect and optimize the collection of that data. So what you're feeding it is high quality. And so when it ultimately, creates or you get the output from it, you have that high quality data.
Exactly. But then at the same time, we work with a lot of patent technology. So there's always, you need to be prudent in how you use your, let's say, IP in the when using AI to find solutions for something.
Right.
It's something we're still figuring out.
Yeah, it's like when it comes to intellectual property, what do you want to feed it unless it's a proprietary system? Right, there are those
Exactly, yeah.
implications. Europe is advancing regulations like the EUDR, which is the Deforestation-Free Supply Chains Initiative, while other regions move slower. How do you meet rising standards without pricing customers out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something, of course, that we're looking at. The implementation of EUDR was supposed to happen end of last year. Now was scheduled until today. It was scheduled for the end of this year, and it seems that we're going to get another year of delay. But it's a core dilemma. Complying with fast-moving and fast-changing sustainability regulations like the EU deforestation regulation that you mentioned, and keeping products affordable and competitive in markets that may be slower to adapt. It's so there's many times regulations are being driven by consumer preference. And I think as an industry, we all understand the necessity to lower carbon footprints and produce in the most sustainable way that we can. But not all markets are equal. And the pricing will also, opportunity will vary from market to market, because there's going to be other markets outside the EU that will have access to non-compliant ingredients. So I think you have to look at segment compliance by market, not by customer. And you have to adjust for varying requirements. Secondly, you have to collaborate across the supply chain.
Right.
You have to do so to reduce costs. So perhaps you can reduce costs to be able to compensate for increased cost in making your supply chain compliant. And thirdly, then you have to monetize that compliance where possible through premium pricing, and that's not an easy task. So I think investors expect sustainable business practices, and I'd say that when you look at the M&A transactions, there's a valorization of that.
Right.
Customers are coming to expect it, but are not yet willing to price that in. So I think it's the positioning of your product when it's compliant with sustainability regulations and has a lower footprint than others, that you can allow to benefit your positioning. But no one in the market will say you're compliant, so I'm going to pay a little bit more. And the key challenge is that, we're not all running at the same pace. So the EU is, let's say, ahead of other global markets. And then the risk is that you don't have a global level playing field. So we can address that by having access to product produced in both US and Denmark. So that supply chain flexibility once again favors us. But it's a challenge because, to be very straightforward, EUR is being implemented. European producers are going to pay a premium. Still going to be a lot of soybean meal left in the world, for example, or cacao or coffee that's not EUDR compliant, and there will be other nations like China, for example, with a huge market potential. They would say, okay, I will take the product at a discount. And I think that's some of the pushback of the industry as well. It's also part of the risk that we see in all these fragmented approaches to sustainability, that it comes with economic implications. So it's not saying that we shouldn't move, but we should move in a smart way.
Right. Yeah, a lot of factors to consider, and depending on the market.
There's an entire podcast, separate podcast.
Right, wholly right. But I think, the market segmentation, and I don't think you have a choice but to, raise prices in specific markets because of the regulations, and it's more expensive.
Exactly.
Beyond carbon, what sustainability metrics actually matter in young animal nutrition?
Yeah, so we always emphasize that improved efficiency is also a sustainability driver. So if you can produce more with less, if you can drive performance, you can increase the average daily weight gain. In short, if you can promote efficiency, then there's going to be less feed needed to grow animals. And that in itself, so the efficiency drive will result in a lower carbon footprint. I think every customer in our industry will look at these. So they look at the feed conversion. How much feed does an animal need to eat to win a kilo of weight? What is the average daily weight gain? So how fast does an animal grow? And what's the mortality rate? So these are typical indicators that we will look at, and the better you score on that, that means that your nutrition is more efficient, and you can produce meat, milk, and eggs with a lower carbon footprint.
Yeah. And when regulation outpaces global alignment, production often migrates. What is the smartest industry response? Would that be like supplier coalitions, certification, harmonization, or new sourcing strategies?
Yeah, it's another great question. As I said before, as an industry, I think we are truly committed. We don't always broadcast that well enough, but we're truly committed to increasing sustainability and support related regulations. And I think the industry has made great progress in the past years or past decades. But of course, we struggle with the lack of a level playing field that I referred to before. So, in an effort to push for a reduced carbon footprint, we see countries, regions, countries, industry federations, consumer organizations, they're all working independently, individually, to create certification programs, regulatory frameworks, incentive programs. So there's a lot of individual approaches, all well intended, but I believe that harmonization would be a welcoming step. But we also need to be realistic. So with different, we saw the speech of the American president yesterday in the United Nations. So there's different geopolitical interests and different views on climate change. So these global alliances will not happen anytime soon. So in my view, the industry needs to be agile. They will need to adapt to a volatile and constantly changing environment, and has to make sure that it can make money, they can monetize any investments in their supply chain, whether it's through cost reduction on the one hand or premium pricing. So you don't move away from the drive to lower your carbon footprint. You don't move away from your responsibility in driving sustainable practices. But you have to realize that on a global level, it's probably not realistic to expect that all interests will be aligned to come up with a common one, but within the common approach or regulatory framework. But as a first step, we should strive to have that within our industry, so we can compare apples with apples, and we know how we are driving this forward.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating because, and so you want to maintain that goal. And I guess at a company level, you can do certain things, but then when you're working with different countries, different regulations, and they're not all aligned, that's got to be frustrating. And like you said, there has to be that flexibility or agility, and because it's always changing. And
it's also confusing for consumers. Now you go to the supermarket and you will see different stamps or quality, and some of your products today have 4 different reference brands, and I think people lose track. So it's well intended, but it's overly complex and very, very fragmented.
Oh,
so
and that's true. Yeah. Even in this between states in this country, what organic even means, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Between California versus other states, what their standards are, and to get a certain seal of approval, it are different requirements. So yeah, when you're looking as a consumer at a label, what does that mean? Farm raised. What does that mean? Free range or organic or right. So it is.
The thing is, and the thing is as well, and I think it's important to also to realize that, the idea that all of our meat, milk, and eggs will come from free ranging, that's just not realistic. If you want to supply the demand for animal protein from meat, milk, and eggs to our global world population, you will need industrialized production. I think that has a lower carbon footprint, a more efficient production process, and affordability. So it's not all markets that consumers will be able to pay 2-3 times more for a free-ranging cow or chicken that was raised in someone's backyard. So we also need to be realistic so the drive that we could supply the global demand with biological or green, let's say what they call the green production, the free ranging production method, that's just not realistic. So then we
Right.
need to see how in this industrialized production process we can drive best practices for animal welfare, animal for health, and production efficiency.
Yeah. And I guess that's a whole nother podcast as well,
True
probably.
that, yeah.
Now, we spoke a little bit about IP, but producers guard performance data for competitive reasons. Yet shared learning accelerates progress. We spoke about a little bit about this in our pre-interview. How do we unlock data collaboration without eroding advantage?
Yeah, this is something dear and near to my heart, and also what we converted into one of our cultural pillars. So one of our behavior values is we call that value through knowledge. So we believe that by sharing knowledge, we create value for our stakeholders, and when we create value for them, that turns into value for us as well. So that creates business, whether it's in market position or real business. So I'm convinced that sharing information is needed to become better as an industry, to become more efficient, more sustainable, more successful. It's the only way we're going to make real progress. But we see that, of course, in the industry, people are very jealous with the knowledge they have and try to keep it close to them because they believe it will give them a competitive advantage versus their neighbors. Uh,
Right.
I've always felt if you pass that threshold or that initial resistance to share information, then you can learn from each other and you can truly improve in your product offering and a better understanding of the functioning in the animal or on the farm. But it needs openness from both sides, and I believe it will be to the benefit of all the players along the supply chain.
Yeah. But I think we've seen that played out in like open source software, for example, being able to take, the understanding of software, and people can use it and grow from there because of the open source, nature, and it develops more quickly. I mean, there's more rapid progress, and you can use it in a lot of different ways. And it just creates that environment of collaboration. And so if there's an issue with the software, the coding or a bug or that kind of thing, there's a discussion around it where people, can learn and grow more quickly and solve problems more quickly. So, yeah, it is a sensitive situation because proprietary information, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a patent, right? I mean, you develop a certain technology and want to be the one who profits from it. And so,
To
yeah.
give you an example, when of course we share a lot of data, scientific data on the trials. We do a lot of trial work with universities and research centers and publish about that. If we do a trial with a customer, um, we know that it is successful because the customer starts buying. Uh, Sometimes they will share some data, but many times they don't because they feel, oh, we found something that worked. It works for us. It makes our nutrition program more efficient or cost effective. We're going to do that, and that gives us a competitive advantage versus other producers in the space. So that's how it works. That's and you see it play out across different species and different markets. Any in-house trial that's being done, people are reluctant to share data with you. You might get an opportunity to look at the results in their office, but you're never going to be able to take notes or take reports with you.
Yeah.
So we still have a long ways to
A
go,
long
but
way to go. I know,
yeah,
but it makes sense, especially when you're dealing with biological, you know, um, trials, or by people or animals specifically, and looking at trials. I mean, why reproduce them over and over and over again? And I mean, it's hard to do in the first place, to set up those trials and to gather that information. And I think the more available we make that data, and the more transparency there is around how it was collected, the further science can advance with people, with diseases, with animals, and like with what you're dealing with as well. So I definitely, agree. And as a researcher myself, I mean, getting data that's one of the most challenging things, is getting good data without having to collect it. A lot of times it's like, where do you get it? Where is it available? Who will share it? And it's hard to move knowledge forward without access to that
Yeah,
data. Yeah.
exactly.
So, Erik, looking ahead, what emerging tools, precision nutrition, rapid diagnostics, AI-assisted formulation will most improve early life outcomes and margins?
Yeah, I'd say all three. I think precision nutrition, rapid diagnostics, and AI-assisted formulation, they have the ability to materially improve early life nutrition and margins. But of course, they do so differently and also on different timelines. So if we break them apart, I'd say rapid diagnostics will probably deliver the fastest clinical and margin wins by reducing overtreatment. And obviously by reducing mortality, which is an issue in our industry. When you look at artificial intelligence being used in formulation, it for sure has the ability to speed up R&D. It will reduce trial work and probably can help drive the search for lower cost substitutes. And that could be a big margin driver as well. And then precision nutrition, yeah, that really promises the largest long-term gains in terms of developmental outcomes. And and if it can be scaled, then it can be truly impactful. So yeah, I think all these tools are important, and technology helps them accelerate. You said earlier 60 to 70% of the cost of producing an animal comes from nutrition. It is a money game in a sense as well to become most efficient, and that becomes even more important at times where farm gate prices, is what farmers get paid, farmers integrators get paid for the meat, milk, and eggs, is under pressure. So you get a higher pressure to reduce cost. And usually, if there's a high pressure, if nutrition cost is high, and what farmers get paid for their goods is under pressure, then you also see pressure on optimization of nutrition. So they have to take cost out, and I feel that farmers integrators, they need to be able to get a fair price for their products, and that's not always the case in today's market. So margin sharing across the different steps in the supply chain, whether it's let's say from farm to fork, is incredibly important to maintain a healthy livestock sector.
Yeah. So if you were advising a new CEO entering animal nutrition today, what 3 risks would you tell them to design for from day one? And what one opportunity should they double down on?
Yeah. I think some I've referred to earlier. So a good working product alone is not enough. There's plenty of companies around. You go to any trade shows, you see a multitude of companies that all offer certain products into the market, and they come and attack certain pain points for the customer from different angles. So you need to be very clear what problem you want to solve for your customer. Is your product the right fit? And then build the relationships to be able to enter into companies to sell your product. I think it's incredibly important if you have the opportunity, and of course, and if you have the funds to invest in your company, to diversify not only across geographies but also across species. Poultry, swine, monogastrics is the largest part, probably 60-70% of all animal protein. Then you have the ruminants, you have aquaculture, and you can apply many of the feed ingredients into pets as well. If you diversify across geographies and species, then of course you mitigate for volatile market circumstances, there's always going to be disease issues: African swine fever, foot and mouth disease, avian influenza. So if you singularly focused on a certain geography or a certain species, then that can hit you really, really hard. So you
Mm.
want to balance that out. And finance, like you need to be agile. We live in a very volatile market environment, so you need to be able to respond to changing conditions. Um, Look at what's happening in today's market with the trade wars going on. So you need to be able to respond quickly to changing consumer demands, changing regulation, changing geopolitical situation, changing regulatory environment. So you need to be quick on your feet to be able to address a changing landscape.
Yeah. So I'm hearing really understanding your market, making sure there's alignment when it comes to who you're partnering with, first of all, making sure that there's a diversity in your product line and who the animals that you're um, serving, and then also being agile when it comes to business and
It's a lot to, of course, to capture in one go, and
yeah,
but you asked for three. Try
yeah,
to try to start with at least one of the three to begin with.
hmm,
You want to get them all right. But I think in this industry, that's critically important. And this is
right,
an industry that's still very conservative. No one's going to buy your product from your website. You need to go out and sell it and build those relationships. And you also know some of their feed additives, there is 1 kilo of inclusion in 1,000 kilos of feed. So you need to be able to convince your customer or prospective customer that it's your product that's contributing to the increased performance of the animal.
hmm,
Then you need to build a relationship of trust.
right,
Then you need to make sure that you have a branding that creates trust with the customer. And it's critically important. You go to any feed mill around the world or integrator, you come on a day that they receive supplies. There's going to be 10 to 15 companies sitting in the waiting room, waiting to speak to procurement or speak to the nutritionist.
oh
So how are
wow,
you going to make that difference?
yeah.
The,
How do you make that difference?
because a diet consists of so many different components. Uh, so there's different ways. There's not one singular approach. And there's also, there's a joke in our industry. You put two nutritionists in a room, by the time they're done discussing, you have three opinions. So not everything is absolute science.
Right.
And then I come back to building that relationship and building that trust with your customer, your prospective
Yeah,
customer.
building, I mean, I guess the final question I would have, like leading off of that one, would be, I mean, so we're talking about a little bit about differentiating yourself, but where do you find the opportunity then? How do you get in front of these, the opportunities? How do you identify them? And because you're having to develop the relationships, where do you find the opportunities?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of trade shows around the world where you can meet with customers and prospective customers, but you really need to go out and knock on doors and speak to them. You know, there's not many companies out there that take everything from zero. So you will hire people that have industry relationship, they have either experience in managing a similar product portfolio, they have experience in certain species, and they for sure have industry contacts. People are very picky where they work because they feel that their name is directly linked to the quality of the product and the quality of the service of the company they're with. So
Hmm.
just so that you bring your reputation into the market, because many of these relationships once established are really sticky. So there's not a very high rotation. It takes a long time getting in, but then once you're in, you will see that some of these relationships will continue for years. So when you're there and you come and represent the company, you want to make sure that you're offering something that really works. So
Right.
there's always a two-way stream. It's not like people are knocking your door, or answering right away. Can I work? That they really will interview you as much as you interview them. so that the quality that you bring to market reflects on their professional integrity as well.
Yeah. So again, and we talked about it being a very long sales cycle. And so developing that relationship is a foundational, part of that process. And yeah, that makes sense. And I guess it's not a huge, I bet it's a small world when it comes to your market. And so you get to know people and they move
True.
around within the
Yeah.
industry. And so
It's a huge market, value-wise, but it's relatively small people-wise. So
like number of players.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
And then,
exactly. The
so,
industry professionals that
mhm.
you build relationships with. Yeah.
And they'll, even if they move somewhere else, that relationship is still maintained. Is there a lot of referral? Is it referral based?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
That's
So,
really nice.
as I said, I made that comment about how you have it's not absolute science everywhere. So you can have trial data in your lab, you can have trial data in the field, but you still need to convince the nutritionist that it makes sense to change his formulation and put your product in. And that is that trust relationship that you need to build. And if that works and your customer or the decision maker, your customer is a believer and he moves to another company, uh, he will take that preference for your product solution and service with you. And it's not just about the product. There's also many times a lot of service and technical support related to that business relationship that you have built.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So referrals are huge. I mean, I see that a lot like in agriculture and these types of businesses that require that have the long sales cycles and depend on relationships. I mean, obviously it's gonna those are the most important things to invest in is that the time and obviously, like you said, the quality of your product too. It's having a product that someone is willing to stand by. And so when you are selling to one vendor, that they have that buy-in that will then that they'll take, no matter where they go. Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the reputation that you want to create, the consistency in your product quality, functioning, and your service level. That will create your reputation in the market.
Right. Well, Erik, this has been a fantastic conversation. Your insights on developing strong servant-based leadership and developing relationships was enlightening. Also, thank you for your insight on how early life nutrition really drives both sustainability and profitability across the protein value chain. For listeners who want to learn more or connect with you, what's the best way to reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn and happy to respond to any inbound.
And what about a website?
At www.hamletprotein.com, and there's a lot of information, aligned with what I said, value through knowledge. We like to share knowledge and insights. There's a lot of interesting information that you can find there if you really want to apply early life nutrition as a driver for the performance of your animals.
Yeah, great. Reach out to Erik via LinkedIn or their website. And to our audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, follow and subscribe to Industry Ignited so you don't miss upcoming episodes with leaders shaping the future of industrial manufacturing and B2B sectors. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.